Estate Show with Pat Lopez, where we talk everything real estate. Today, my guests are Lita Bonner and Neil Hilkirk from PAX Legal. Lita?
Afternoon, Pat.
Neil?
Thanks for inviting us.
Welcome to the show. Okay, I always start off the show by you guys telling me your story. So how did you start with real estate law?
When I first became an attorney, I owned a company. And as I was segueing out of that business into a new, I started working in real estate. And then I started working in real estate law and doing business and litigation matters on behalf of realtors and buyers, sellers. It's where I met Neil. We've been working together for about 10 years now.
Great. And Neil, your story?
Yeah, I actually started my legal practice in the public defender's office. So I was in litigation from the very beginning. And then when I transitioned out into my first private practice role, I worked for a firm that primarily did construction work and represented a number of builders and developers, large builders and developers. So that's how I got started in real estate. Then in the last 10 years, Lee and I have worked in the same firm together. We got to know each other and decided to do something on our own.
Okay, great. So that leads to the next question. Why did you decide to form, PAX Legal, and how long have you been open as PAX Legal?
Yeah, Lee and I both come from a pretty extensive business background. So law was one of the things we did, but we also have done business in the past and our other lives.
Right.
And we were talking business. We were talking about the practice of law and what it means in the business world and real estate and title work. And we just came to the realization that we thought it was time to make a move and do it on our own. So we took a year, planned it out, and kicked off our own firm about a month ago.
Oh, so brand new.
Okay. Very new.
Great. Well, good luck with it, right?
Thank you,
Thank
Pat. Thank you.
Okay, so let's jump into disclosures. The importance of disclosures, because that was one of the topics that we were talking about earlier. Now, of course, you have a contract, right? You have property disclosures. If it's a condo, you would have, condo docs, that kind of thing. So just walk me through, just the different disclosures and the importance, of them.
Do you want to start?
Okay. All right. So PA and New Jersey are a little bit different. In Pennsylvania, there is a specific seller's disclosure document. There's a lot of litigation around that in terms of what should be included, what's not included, what's required to be included, so on and so forth. New Jersey is a little bit different. They don't have a specific seller's disclosure document, although if you ask for one, they can produce one because there's sort of a form in New Jersey. In New Jersey, it's a little different in this regard, in that they have the 3-day attorney review period. So I think the attorney review period pretty much provides, in a matter of speaking, the same disclosures that you have in PA to a certain extent, because the attorneys are now concerned about representing their clients appropriately. Right. But PA is definitely stricter when it's handled appropriately with the seller's disclosure form. So once you get that as a prospective buyer, you read all the disclosure information, and you got to ask the right questions.
Right. And the problem is with DocuSign, people are just, sending this out, nobody's reading it, they're just DocuSign it, and that's it. And then, lo and behold, after you own the house, it shows, damn, I got water in my basement. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that is a big, pitfall as far as that's concerned. And now, as far as like the contracts, they're pretty much boilerplate, parts,
Yep.
right. That's done. But there's, different nuances, on there, different options, home inspections and all that kind of stuff that you can choose. So, how important is it to really, talk to your realtor and really understand, the different choices you have on there?
I think it's incredibly important. It's important for you to speak to your realtor and understand the importance of getting an inspection. And it's important to talk to your realtor and understand the seller's disclosure form. You need to review it and ask questions if there's an ambiguity or there's a question. A lot of times sellers will think that they don't have to disclose something because they think they fixed it,
right,
when really they should, or they disclose something in one place, but they don't explain it. And nobody bothers to ask that question, but you have to ask those questions of your realtor and of the seller. And Neil and I, as attorneys and as realtors, would always encourage our clients to get an inspection, a home inspection. It's very important. And I know in this day and age, a lot of people are waiving them.
Right, it's tough.
It causes some problems.
Right, right, exactly. And then, so your suggestion would be, you already made it. You said, hey, you should get a home inspection, but a lot of people are really frustrated. They put 10, 15 different offers. They're putting over ask and they're just not getting it. So, they give up. They say, okay, I'm waiving everything, which it's just a difficult market, right?
Yeah, it is. And Lita and I are attorneys in both Pennsylvania and New Jersey, both of us. But in PA, we're also licensed real estate agents. So we really see it from all sides. And it's really a disservice to the clients the prospective buyers, and to some extent even the sellers too, when they don't appreciate the risk involved in not having full disclosure and not making an informed decision about likely the most significant asset you're going to purchase in your entire life.
Right.
And I know everyone's concerned about getting paid, and let's get the deal done, let's push it through to the end. But understanding what you're buying and the risk in what you're buying and the value in what you're buying is really important. That's really left up to the agents in PA, but the attorneys as well when they have the opportunity to be involved.
Okay. Okay. So we have agreement of sale. We have disclosures in PA,
Yep.
not necessarily in New Jersey,
Not
which I didn't know
required in
that.
New Jersey.
Not
Not
required
the
in New
same,
Jersey.
yeah.
I learn something new every day, or at least I try to. Okay. So now if you're buying a condominium, there's disclosures that you have there, condo docs. Can you elaborate on that and the importance on reviewing the information there?
Sure. Whether you're buying a condo or in a homeowners association, the Uniform Community Act and Uniform Plan Community Act, Uniform Condominium Act and Uniform Plan Community Act have a requirement. And the requirement is to provide certain disclosures to prospective buyers when you're buying into one of those kinds of entities. So those documents called the 3407 or the 5407 or what they call the resale certificate
Right.
have important pieces of information. Most important piece of information we think is probably the financial disclosures. So from that information, you should look at the financial status of the community in terms of what are you paying your assessments for? That's in your annual budget. And you should see it also not in the budget, but also in the annual operating statement. And also the most important thing in addition to the operating is the reserve analysis, because
Right.
all of these communities, all of these entities have needs for long-term capital repairs, swimming pools, tennis courts, paving,
Right.
concrete, so on and so forth. So is there enough money saved to pay for those things when those repairs, those replacements are really needed?
Right. So let me elaborate on that because that is huge. If your association fee is $500, and then after you buy 3-4 months later, there's a special assessment, and now they're saying, hey, it's 1,500 because we have to make up because there's not enough money in reserves to do repairs in the future. Now all of a sudden, my mortgage payment, which is all bundled together total, is now $1,000 more a month. I mean, that could cripple somebody. They may not be able to afford it. And that's what you're alluding to,
Yeah,
correct?
totally.
Absolutely. And what also happens is when things that maybe you didn't anticipate were going to need to be repaired, like stucco, do need to be repaired. Again, it's a special assessment and that falls on the homeowners.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so that's huge. So if you're really not examining, or if you're buying a condo, call you guys because I really think that's something that you really need to dig into. Now, I do know in I think it's Southside Florida, they had a condo fall, and now there's new regulations where you actually have to do an analysis of the property as far as structural integrity and all that kind of stuff, which will minimize a little bit. But you look at the special assessments, and so mortgage companies are looking at that information, but still, I mean, you really have to dive in there and look at it, right, to safeguard yourself.
Yeah, any prudent planned community, whether it be a HOA or a condominium, really should be doing what they call capital reserve analysis or capital reserve studies, which means on an annual, on a regular basis, 3 years, 5 years is a typical time period. You should be bringing in a qualified engineering firm to look at all the capital assets of which the community at large is responsible for. Swimming pools, paving, concrete, streets, and whatever else may be. If
Right.
it's a condo, you've got the entire structure, the inside of which is all common elements. Those things need to be evaluated on a regular, periodic basis by professionals to say, hey, what repairs are needed, when are they needed, and how much is it going to cost? So we're reserving or saving appropriately for those needs when they arise.
Right. Okay. Now, I went on your website and there's a lot about construction. So, and you already mentioned stucco. So what are some, let's get off of the condo part. It could be condo, but it could be buying a home. So what are some other things that a home buyer should look at that are common that you see?
I think stormwater is one of the biggest things after looking at the exterior of the home or looking at your condominium documents, making sure that there's not water infiltration into the property. And we've handled some cases with some stormwater issues, either from buyers purchasing a property and all of a sudden there's water, come to find out that the grading plan was altered by the seller without disclosure. So you've got not just a seller's disclosure issue, but an alteration. And then you've got the township who wants to make sure that the grading plan they approved is adhered to. So now all of a sudden you're on the hook for fixing
Right.
this problem. So I would say stormwater, and I'm sure Neil will.
Yeah, I would say that the next issue, other than those construction defect issues in terms of how the building was actually
Right.
constructed, then we look at the mechanicals, the HVAC systems, particularly in new construction. Was the HVAC system heating, ventilation, and air conditioning? Was it sized properly for the need? Because we see a lot of homes where the system wasn't sized appropriately, either and or in some cases not even installed properly. So people are getting ridiculously high electric bills, gas bills, and they're still living comfortably in their home. And these are expensive homes. These can be $1 million plus homes. They're still having these problems. So the third area I would look at is the HVAC system, the mechanicals in the building.
Okay. And then how would a home buyer protect themselves? Obviously, you're going to do a home inspection, but I mean, it may not cover everything, right? I mean, the home inspector may not know about the grading part of it, right?
They may not, and they aren't able to investigate beyond surface level, the home inspector, with the exception sometimes of invasive stucco. So again, you've got to look at the documents. You've got to sort of trust the seller to disclose to you. And if you have any concerns, you should maybe ask to see the original plans. You want to definitely ask about any stormwater systems for your community or for your property in general.
Okay.
Who's responsible for them, and how do they get maintained? How do you ensure that they're actually working properly?
Yeah, and there are times when you've even recommended, depending on the situation, the risk we think the prospective buyer may be subject to themselves to is, look, if the home inspector can't do this inspection and they have limitations, go to an engineer.
Right.
Get an engineer for a little more money. You're protecting an asset that's worth $1 million plus, and sometimes even less. Look, it's still a safety issue that's going to reduce your risk, and you're going to know what your risk really is in this case. So it's worth the money you're going to spend.
Great. Okay. So, what other areas do you cover as far as law? Like, what do you practice? What other areas, or did we cover most of them?
Yeah, Lita can elaborate on this too, but I would like to say that our area of most success and the area which we really enjoy the most and we have found where we're getting the best results for clients is complex real estate related litigation, whether it be a quiet title action, whether it be a construction defect matter, even in some estates where we're trying to resolve or settle an estate issue which involves real estate, has really been some of our most successful cases. We really enjoy that kind of work. We're good at that kind of work, and we've gotten good results for our clients.
Okay, great. Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you guys, how would they do that?
They could go to our website, www.paxlegalllc.com, or they can email Neil or I. Our emails are pretty simple, Neil or Lida, Lida, at paxlegalllc.com.
Okay, well, great. Thanks for being on the show. Some valuable information.
Thank you, Pat.
And I learned something. I had no clue about that disclosure in New Jersey. I thought everybody had to do that. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. That's the Real Estate Show with Pat Lopez. Be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe below. Super important. Have some great guests, some really good content lined up for you. Also, leave a comment. Tell me some things that you like, you didn't like, or some show topics you'd like me to cover in the future. Remember, this show is everything real estate, no limits. Hope you enjoyed the show.